Thank you for joining I Am Possible, which is India's first future tech meets sustainability podcast. And today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Mr. Rafee Tarafdar, who's the Senior VP and CTO of the Strategic Technology Group at Infosys. He's also the author of the book The Live Enterprise, Create a Continuously Evolving and Learning Organization. So, Rafi, really appreciate you taking time and being part of a humble little podcast. So, why don't we start with a small introduction, a background, and what you do at Infosys?
Sure, Eddie. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I appreciate it. I'm a CTO at Infosys, and I've been with Infosys now since 2004, so almost close to about 17 years. And in my current role at Infosys, I focus on four broad areas. One is to work with our clients and advise them on their whole cloud and digital transformation journeys. Second, I focus on the strategic platforms that we are building at Infosys. These are industry platforms as well as on the technology platforms. Third, I focus on sensing and identifying some of the emerging technologies or technology shifts that are happening in the industry, which could have a big impact either on our business or on our client's business. And the fourth is to deepen and create very high-tech talent density at Infosys.
So you mentioned about these four different buckets, your client services, your cloud transformation being one of them, strategic platforms being one of them, sensing and identifying emerging technology being one of them, and the last one, grooming talent. Would you like to kind of unpack these one at a time so my audience kind of understands these four different buckets?
So if we take the first thing, let's start with the first one. So today, if you look at it, largely what we do is we work with Fortune 500 clients, right, or even the Global 2000. So most of our clients today are already working on their cloud transformation journey. So they're already working on moving a lot of the enterprise workloads that run in their own data centers onto one cloud or multiple clouds, or in certain cases, poly-cloud, what we call, which is a combination of private and public clouds, right? So that's one area where they're looking at how do we move this so that they can leverage the innovation and velocity that comes with cloud, and also the scale that comes with cloud. And then as they do it, they're also looking at, how do we modernize and build cloud native kind of experiences on top of the stack, right? Because it is not just about moving from a private data center onto a cloud, but it's also about reimagining the experience, reimagining the process, and looking at it afresh so that they can think like digital natives. So that's one big shift that is happening. And in this, if we break it down into the different technology layers, this requires the whole infrastructure layer that is reimagined. It requires reimagining of the entire deployment model, the engineering processes. Everything is becoming containerized. Everything is becoming event-driven. It's also about the way the data is to be managed, right? So traditionally, a lot of data on-prem would be on appliances or would be on proprietary databases. But as clients move on to cloud, they're also saying, okay, why do I not use the cloud native databases or open source databases or data lakes or data platforms that are available on cloud? Move everything to microservices based architecture, API endpoints, and also more user friendly experiences, right? So the entire stack in a way is also getting reimagined, keeping obviously the end user in mind, right? Because end of the day, they're doing all of this in order to drive differentiation in value and to also provide better service to their customers. So that's essentially what's happening in the first bucket.
Would you like to unpack strategic platform, the second bucket that you're talking about? And then maybe you can also go into your sensing and identifying technology and talent grooming.
See, at Infosys today, if you look at it, we build a number of different technology platforms that are useful for us to drive or enable our services better. So as part of it, we have been launching a number of different platforms. Like when we did our own transformation to be a digital native, we created this whole live enterprise suite, which has got a number of different technology platforms that we believe can be helpful for any organization that is moving to cloud, that is going through this whole transformation journey. Then we have data platforms, we have security platforms, we have then similarly, the whole API integration platform. So one class of platforms that we have created are these technology platforms. Then what we have done is wherever we see white spaces, while we always had Finacle, we had EdgeWorld, which has its own products like Assist Edge and Trade Edge. We also started developing new industry products, right? So one created for life insurance industry, we call it as Engine, which is part of our McCamish portfolio. And then we are doing another industry platform called Helix, which is for healthcare. So our aspiration is that we will create a lot more of these technology and industry platforms which complement the services today that we are offering to our clients and helps us to deliver more value. So that's the second bucket, right? Now, third bucket, if you look at it from the whole sensing, incubating, and scaling of new technologies, this is where we are doing two or three different things. So, one from a sensing standpoint, at Infosys we have Infosys Tech Compass. So, a Tech Compass is it's almost like a map that tells you for a given technology domain, which technologies are moving towards legacy, which technologies are mainstream, and which are emerging. So we take a three horizon view, H1, H2, H3. And the idea is that we regularly look at what's happening in the research space, what's happening in the startup space, what's happening with open source, what's happening with hyperscalers, and where our clients are investing. And using a combination of these different avenues, we then identify the shifts that are happening, either in terms of adoption of tools, new patterns, new techniques, or in certain cases, it could also be new platforms that are gaining significant adoption. So this has become a good channel for us, and these are available on our website as well. And these today are available for almost about 9+ technology domains, and we are also doing now for business domains. So this is how we do a lot of sensing, which is identifying some of those emerging technologies and big bets. Now, once we have identified specific areas we want to invest in, then we have our whole Infosys Center of Emerging Technology Solutions, where a lot of incubation of these new technologies happen. And in this, what we also do is we have created something called as an Infosys Innovation Network. And as part of Infosys Innovation Network, we work with a number of different startups who become where if we find that our clients are looking to solve specific problems that these startups have solved, then we bring them, onboard them into our network. And once they are part of our network, we take these network companies to our clients who are looking for some innovative solutions or exponential technologies to solve the problems that their business is facing or their customers are facing. Then what we also did is we created something called as a living labs, which is where we bring a lot of these emerging solutions. We packaged it because when this whole COVID happened, obviously earlier model we used to bring them to our campuses, we used to bring them to our digital studios where we used to showcase a lot of it. Then we also had to go virtual so that anybody could experience anywhere. So we launched the virtual living labs as well, where we bring a lot of these solutions together and make it available to our clients. So that's the third area. The fourth, like I said, is all about the technology talent building. And this is where we are investing significantly in creating deep technology career paths. So about 3 years back, we started a career path for programmers, and we call this as Power Programmer Stream. So the idea is somebody can start a job or career as a programmer, and they could also retire as a programmer while they could earn the compensation which commensurates with their number of years of experience. So they don't have to move out of coding, in order to grow or in order to get higher compensation. So this is something that we started, we call Power Programmer Stream. Then we also identified that a lot of our clients need solution mindset people who can bring a combination of business and technology skills. So for that, we created this whole digital specialist stream, where we are bringing people who can imagine new ideas, new solutions, reimagine processes and experiences for our clients. And then we have an architecture stream, which is all focused on really architecting cutting edge, large, complex programs and solutions and platforms for our clients, right? So those are the four buckets in a way, if I unbundle them into the next level of detail.
I don't think that you guys have left anything for chance, because we've got into a world which is become hyper connected and extremely complicated. And gone are the days when a business could function in a legacy traditional manner, because there are these smaller, agile, lean startups who are creating disruption because they have a small team. They don't have the hierarchy of, executing a plan, and there is so much. But there is some exciting things. So you are a huge organization, but is working like a startup, and I think leveraging all the benefits, and not just for yourself, but I think growing the ecosystem. So why don't we start with COVID? Because COVID has been a super game changer for everyone, and especially for enterprise, because so far there were a lot of these enterprises who used to talk about digital transformation, but implementation was pretty, slow. But post COVID, I think every organization has become digital first. So would you like to talk about the need for digital transformation, and maybe share some use cases on how it's benefiting now and how it's going to benefit in the long run?
Sure. See, I think the digital need for digital transformation, fortunately, is something that we identified much before COVID, actually. So it was almost towards I would say 3-4 years back is when we started an initiative which resulted in the book that I co-authored called Live Enterprise. And this was around the time when Nandan came back as the chairman of our company. And he said that, we need to transform Infosys internally to also operate like a digital native company, right? And that led to the whole live enterprise transformation. And as part of the live enterprise, what we did is, and this was actually a pan-Infosys effort, where a number of different teams within Infosys and a number of Infosians came together to reimagine our experience, reimagine our processes, and also to create a shared digital infrastructure for the company. So a lot of what we had done actually pre-COVID. And then when COVID happened, this got stress tested, right? Because, okay, you have done all of it. So, for example, around COVID time, we had to now move towards a completely remote operating model, right? So, where if you look at it earlier, we would operate almost physically, almost the entire employees will be in office. And then when we have to move to a remote working location, we could do that within a week's time. And a lot of it was possible because of the investments we had done into our digital infrastructure. And that essentially enabled us to quickly move and operate and work remotely in an anytime, anywhere operating model. Right? And simple example is, if somebody wants to do learning, so today if you look at it, we recruit a number of different graduates, and because we are in the services business, we have to continuously upgrade ourselves. So learning is very key. So we launched a learning platform called Lex. This is actually available on phone, it's on any commoditized device. The whole app runs, and you could learn anything that you want on the phone, right? You could be in a bus, you could be in a plane. You can do continuous learning. So that's one. Then what we did is we also said, why should employees come to the enterprise to perform day-to-day operation? Can they perform? So, for example, if I have to do a leave, if I have to do a travel booking, why do I need to log into a VPN, connect, and do all that stuff? Can I do all of it like any consumerized application on a phone? So, we launched something called InfiMe, which is for our personal productivity. So, it is like for my personal productivity. Again, I have a app on my phone using which I can do most of my day-to-day things. Then, if you look at it, Infosys hires a number of employees, and the entire employee onboarding process was a manual and paper-based process. So we fully digitized that process, eliminated paper from that, and for that we launched something called as Launchpad. And using Launchpad, employees can complete their process. So when COVID struck, and we had to onboard thousands of employees, because we already had these digital tools, we could do that seamlessly. We could do learning seamlessly. We could do a lot of the day-to-day operations seamlessly. And the stress testing actually also opened up some new issues which we had never thought of. And these could be issues, these were issues on the process side, on the policy side, which had to be done when you operate in this whole anytime, anywhere model. And we had to fix that. And that created new challenges like, okay, now, how do you bring different teams together in order to create that office-like environment? And that's where we ended up creating a new platform called Meridian, which is a collaboration platform. And this is a platform that we also used for a number of our customer events and all that. So, pre-COVID, a lot of it, what we built got stress tested. After COVID, we identified new needs for which we then started building new digital tools. So I think thanks to a lot of investments we did, it turned out good for us.
Our education system has a genuine problem. We create students, but we don't create skilled workers, and that's the reason we have this a gap between for these enterprise, because there's this new work requirement which is spawning, like people into data science, computer vision, AR, VR, MR, IoT, blockchain. But we still lack that skilled workers. So maybe unpack a little bit more about the Lex learning, or also unpack this remote working, or because you said that's something which you guys were doing before COVID. What has been the learnings? Because there's so many companies who are understanding the benefits of remote work, and you mentioned you also launched the platform called Meridian. Are you exploring AR, VR, MR, metaverse? Because that's the new space where you create immersive workspace, and in maybe like the next few years, possibly with this holograph, mixed reality headset, we could have kind of interactions and collaborations which could be real time. So, are there any with Meridian possibly expanding and going into leveraging the AR, VR, MR space, or I'm sure you guys are already doing it. Please unpack that.
Yeah, sure. So I think with learning, see, the goal for us is, if you look at it, a lot of learning that programs that we have on our learning platform are largely for us to become productive on the different projects that we would work on, right? And that's essentially the primary purpose. So our focus was to enable just-in-time learning, right? While you do a periodic learning anyways as part of either your onboarding process or whenever you want to do certifications and so on and so forth, but also do a lot of just-in-time learning. Second is our Lex team actually created playgrounds where a lot of times, just reading is not good enough. You actually want to get your hands dirty, write code, test it out, and do that. So they've created a capability where within Lex platform, you could spin off a new stack So let's say I want to I'm learning Angular as a front end. I want to have Java microservices as a back end, and let's say MongoDB as my database. Now I can actually spin off a stack on the Lex playground, and then I can go and build an application, test it out, and all that stuff. So the idea is, how do you give them enough real life learning experience so that they can learn it? Now, coming to your question of augmented reality, see, augmented reality is something that we have been trying. So, especially in classrooms and all that stuff, kind of set up, right? So, how do you overlay information on this is something that we have been experimenting and all that. And Meridian was largely about creating these digital workspaces where you bring people together, right? And our thing is, we used to do a lot of interactions with our clients, with our employees in town halls, meetings, and all. So, how do you create that kind of an environment? So, that's something that we did. We experimented with avatars. We brought different teams together. We enabled localized, personalized communications, right? So, for example, if you know somebody, then you find that individual and you want to talk. And in some cases, you may want to have a sidebar chat, right? Which is what happens when you meet physically. If 100 people meet and then there is a breakout, then you would go in and enable it. So enabling some of it. Now, the metaverse kind of capabilities is something that we are right now working towards. It's not something that we have it live now. So we are looking at how do we bring a lot of that capability into the platform and so.
There's this company called EXP Reality. It's a unicorn. It's a real estate firm based out of US. So they have around 30,000 workforce, but they don't have a physical workspace whatsoever. So everybody is given a virtual reality headset, and they interact with the clients on the virtual reality headset. They close deals remotely, virtually. So that's the world that we're getting into, because you save on the logistics, you save on the travel, and I think Accenture has done something similar. They, I think, distribute somewhere around, they bought 60,000 Oculus Quest virtual reality headsets. So anybody who kind of even joins in gets a virtual reality headset, because I think metaverse is this new world which is kind of opening our Web 3.0, where we will break away from a 2D screen which has restricted us for over 100 years and get into that interactive world, and yeah, so it's an exciting space that we are getting into. What do you
But I think, see, that headsets and all, I think still have to be commoditized more.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
actually more excited about the innovations happening on browser, because browser is very commoditized. It can run on any device, and today augmented reality is fairly good on a browser as well. So I'm very keen to see how some of these technologies become commoditized and become available either as part of the W3C specs or as part of the browser tech, because then the potential of usage suddenly becomes huge, right? And then the adoption will grow exponentially.
Right, and I think that's where the push is towards, with the web AR, with the metaverse. We're moving to a world where the browsers will be enabled, which will give us more, the 3D interaction, things like that. Would you like to talk about your book, The Live Enterprise: Create a Continuously Evolving and Learning Organization? Share some insights with the audience.
Sure. So, earlier on I said that at Infosys we went through this whole journey of transforming Infosys to be a digital native. And when we had to develop a vision for what is it that we want to be, what we realized is, see, technology is something that will continue to change, right? So earlier, if you look at it, any new technology from inception to maturity used to take about 15, 16 years. Today that happens with 4 to 5 years. And today we also see that the technology is becoming obsolete also very fast. If you look at it, when I was doing a lot of web development, Struts framework used to be the thing early on. And today nobody talks about Struts framework, right? And everybody has more or less migrated out of it. So given that technology one is evolving very rapidly, we said we need to have an architecture and vision where we can isolate ourselves from technology changes, and continuously evolve, because your business model also will keep evolving. Like pre-COVID, nobody would have thought that we would work in a remote only model. But then when COVID struck, everybody had to adopt that model. There was no choice. So then this required a lot of changes in processes, policies, technology, and everything, right? So the idea was technology will change, business models and processes may change. So how do we create an architecture and an IT enterprise that can continue to evolve and change? And that led to the whole live enterprise vision. So Nandan, our chairman, actually laid out a lot of that vision, and then we worked on. So the journey that we took at Infosys over the last 3-4 years in order to transform Infosys to be a live enterprise. We thought the transformation journey we went through is something that is very much applicable to our clients, is very much applicable to any incumbent enterprise that is going through this. And we thought there were a lot of learnings that we had as part of our journey, and we wanted to share this with our clients, with the larger industry, and that is what led to the authoring of the book. So we have an Infosys Knowledge Institute at Infosys. So so one of my co-author is Jeff, who heads the Infosys Knowledge Institute. So we thought this is a good thing for us to tell to the larger world, and that's how the book came about.
Lovely. I will definitely share the link of the book, but would you like to kind of share some insights to the listeners, enterprise, of what the book is all about and how it's going to help them?
Yeah, sure. See, I think with live enterprise, if you look at it, everybody knows where they want to go, right? So everybody knows that, okay, I want to be like the next Amazon, or I want to be the next Shopify, or I want to be the next Tesla. And everybody says, okay, we want to do there. But the harder part is, how do you get there? And how do you get there in a way that you minimize the risk, you innovate on the journey, and you uh, get there in a seamless fashion, right? And this is where I'll pick few elements which I think are very relevant, right? So if you look at any enterprise, it's almost like an elephant, and you can't eat an elephant in one bite. So you can't really transform existing or large enterprises in one shot. So you have to do a number of small changes that we call as micro changes. So any such transformation, micro change is a key. Is how do we do one change at a time, and maybe follow a distributed agile model where you can do releases every 6 weeks, so that you do one change every 6 weeks, so that over a period of time everybody sees that these small changes that we are doing are having a compounding effect, and it will change the center of gravity of the organization, completely from where it is to where you want to be, but without disruption, right? Without creating a significant disruption. And what the micro change model also allows you is to do course corrections. See, because when doing such large scale transformation, you do a change, you learn, you see what is working, what is not working, and then you essentially refine your approach, and then you keep iterating and do. So this is one part. The second part is to do these micro changes, you need to create what we call as a micro enterprise or a quantum organization, where you can have a number of these micro teams that can do these innovations at scale and speed, right? And the idea is to create cross functional teams. So bring teams from different functions, look at it from in our case, from an employee standpoint, end to end, and use that perspective in order to drive these micro changes. Now, on one hand, you said micro changes, we said we'll create these self-sustainable, very hyper-productive micro teams. But then you also need to create a shared digital infrastructure. So a shared digital infrastructure for us is all the platform services that are required for an organization. If I want to create a new cloud environment, I want to get some insights on my employees, I want to let's say do some learning. So how do you create a lot of these services that are required as a shared digital infrastructure that the smaller teams can consume as API endpoints and quickly innovate? The idea was, if you want to innovate at the edges, you need to give these tools to these micro teams that they can take these shared digital infrastructure services and then build on its own. Right, and this is what we did. Where, for example, the sales team did their innovation on their own, the learning team did something on their own, the collaboration team did something on their own, the supply chain teams did something, the recruitment teams did something. So the idea is to create this digital runway, is what I call. So if you look at an airport, what does an airport provide? An airport provides an infrastructure where flights can land and take off, and then you have got passengers who use the airport in order to rapidly come in and go out. So for an enterprise, can we create a digital runway that provides all the infrastructure services that are required for these teams that can then innovate at a rapid pace? Now, this also requires a hybrid talent, right? Which is what we talked about in the book. Is a new kind of a talent model is required that is almost like a Z-shape that brings a lot of these multidisciplinary capabilities in order to drive, and doing all of that with purpose in mind, right? Because if you don't have purpose, and this is where we bring in a lot of ESG goals also into it, to say how do we bring purpose into everything we do, so that eventually we are also helping with the larger ESG agenda that today every organization is talking. So these are some aspects which we have bundled it into what we call as a live enterprise model. And this model provides a framework using which you can transition from where you are to where you are.
Rafi, I would like you to unpack or unbundle the hybrid talent, because talent workforce is the key for any organization. What's the shift that you are seeing post COVID? And please unbundle a hybrid talent.
Traditionally, earlier, we used to hire a lot of engineering graduates only, right? Deep technical skills. Now we're bringing in a lot of diverse skills. So somebody comes from a design background. Now, a lot of these designers that come, they could have very different backgrounds. Somebody could have a psychology background. Somebody could have humanities or a complete design background. Because when you want to reimagine experience and think about some of these things, one is you need talent with very different kind of expertise and exposure, because that essentially helps us to think in a more inclusive manner. It also helps us to think sometimes a bit out of the box. Otherwise, as techies, we only think of building features and creating more and more things. But bringing that user perspective by bringing people with that diverse background, one helps. Second is, today, if you look at core engineering itself, I think today now one of the things that is happening is we need more and more what I call as polyglots. And what I mean by polyglot is one. See, traditionally earlier, what used to happen is you used to have people who were experts in one particular area. So if I am a database expert, I am only a database expert. I am a DBA. I will only do this. But we said, okay, this is becoming too specialized, which means if I'm going to construct a squad, then I need to bring in 20 people with 20 different expertise in order to build, which is not sustainable. So we said we need full stack, right? So somebody who can understand end to end, who could do a lot of full stack things. Now, which is one part where we said, okay, now I need to have a combination of these different skills that are required. Then we said combination is good, but then as you get into more higher expertise, you also need to understand related technologies, right? So for example, if I am Angular, I should understand React, I should understand Flutter, I should understand Polymer, I should know Vue, I should know Node.js, so I need to understand the ecosystem, because a lot of innovations will happen here and there. So same thing would be for database. I might be an Oracle person, but can I understand Postgre? Can I understand MongoDB, Cassandra? Now graph databases like Neo4j are coming, so can I understand a lot? So a combination of full stack and a family of technology is what leads to what we call the polyglot. This then has to be, also supplemented with an ability to think differently, right? And this is where some time back we did this whole design thinking workshop, design thinking training for almost all of us. And the idea is, instead of being an order taker, how do you think like a problem solver? See, if you're a platform company, your product company, you decide what features are there, and functionality and you do. Whereas if you're in a services company, a lot of times a requirement spec is given and you work on. But in our business now, our clients expect us to also bring a lot of fresh thinking, which means we now have to change the pivot to think about some of these newer requirements, think about implications, think about things like high resilience, think about the user impact and all that. So design thinking capability became important. Then the ability to also articulate and communicate and be a good storyteller becomes important. Right? So if you look at it, it's almost a multi-dimensional set of capabilities that are required, and that is what we look at as a hybrid talent. To see how over a period of time a number of these capabilities and skill sets can be acquired so that we become more hyper-productive.
Right. I think the future demands hybrid talent, and we need to nurture and nudge our students and the future in that direction, because all of these technologies, I don't think there's one single technology which I can say is going to be the technology which is going to create transformation. All of these technologies are kind of converging. Even when we talk about the metaverse is nothing if the blockchain, NFTs, AR, VR, MR, IoT, digital twins, artificial intelligence, if they don't, and 5G, they don't come together. I think this converging of technology demands us to be a lifelong learner, keep asking deeper questions, try to problem solve, and I guess that's the only way we'll be able to create products and services and solutions which the world really needs of, rather than just keep on iterating onto what we've been doing, so and create like those really moonshot products. Artificial intelligence, it's a technology which is creating really deep impacts across society, nations. There are nations who are trying to acquire artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, because that will give them a undue advantage. Would you like to unpack artificial intelligence? How is Infosys leveraging AI, and how do you think in the long run India can benefit with artificial intelligence?
Yeah. I think AI technology now is in a way coming off the hype curve in a way, right? So after this whole Web3 and metaverse, I think a lot of attention is going from AI to metaverse and Web 3.0, so which is good in a way, right? And with AI, we are now, I think, moving to a stage where enterprise scale deployments are starting to happen. So if I look at artificial intelligence area in itself, I think there are a few areas where we see a good amount of maturity and a lot of work already happening. So one is on vision. A lot of vision services are fairly mature. Speech is another area. NLP is third area. Language is other area where you want to convert from one to other or generate and do all that. And recommendations was always one of the initial areas where we saw a lot of it happening. Decision making, I think, is still not that much. Then in operations area, AI ops is again something that is very mature, right? So these are some areas where I see today the application of AI has become mature. Now, interestingly, we are entering into a stage where multimodal AI is coming, right? Where I can, let's say, if I take an image and in an image there is a text. So today we have the ability to start doing. I think that will make it even more powerful and impressive. So these are areas where we are seeing a lot of value. Now, if I look at it from the adoption standpoint, see, AI in consumer tech has anyways become mainstream. So today on our phones, we have AI assistants that is helping us do a lot of tasks. But in enterprises, I think it is still early stage. Because if you look at it, the consumer tech S-curve in a way comes first, and that is then followed by the enterprise space. I think in enterprises today, the bigger challenge is data engineering. That is required. So today in some of the work that we have done, what we have seen is almost 60-65% of the time is going just in data engineering, data preparation, and rest of the time is actually going in tuning, deployment, and reimagining it and all that stuff. So that way, I think there is, while today we are trying to grapple with these data problems, but the good thing is organizations have now started looking at creating that AI infrastructure that is required to scale AI across the enterprise. Till now, what was happening is everybody was doing some point solutions, point innovations. Now, just like any enterprise tech is used widely, like databases, I think AI is also getting into a stage where this decade, I think over the next few years, we'll see more and more adoption into core business processes, into the core business process of every enterprise. Like today at Infosys, we use AI a lot in our talent management, in our recruitment process and all, right? And we are embedding these into it. Now, to do some of these things, I can tell you at Infosys, one of our goals was, because we believe AI is going to be the most dominant technology this decade, uh, we wanted to democratize AI across the enterprise, which means anybody at Infosys, if they want to learn, they should be able to do it. So what we did is, one, we created an AI cloud. So an AI cloud is where we have a lot of this GPU infrastructure that is available, and anybody who is interested or who wants to train their models or do something, they can provision and block the GPUs, and then they can work on it. Then what we did is we created an entire AI engineering layer on top, which covers right from your feature engineering to your data catalog to your ML ops to the deployment through containers and then trying it out. So we created that entire life cycle, and now we have started creating a lot of these business services. All right, because see, technology services are there, but we are experimenting and creating a lot of these AI-driven business services that can help reimagine process. Because the value in AI will come by reimagining a process. Take a simple example. I give this example in recruitment. Is when you want to hire somebody, you as a human, if I'm a hiring manager, I will think about it. I'll document it into a job spec. Then I will give it to the hiring recruitment team. The recruitment team will analyze it, post it on website. A candidate will look at it. Then they will publish, send that submitted profile. Then somebody will manually review the profile. Then somebody will key in the data. Then you will do a matching. Now imagine if I use AI, where from the profile I automatically extract all the text, make sure any biases are removed. This is very important, especially in recruitment and those processes, to make sure that anything that can create a bias is removed. Then I can almost disintermediate and remove a number of steps in this entire process and make it very seamless, right? So for all of these, I think it's important to create that AI infrastructure, the AI cloud and the AI platform that can be used to democratize. But we believe this is big, and this would be the most dominant in the rest of the years in this decade.
Are there any concerns regarding AI that worries you? You mentioned about data engineering. There's a lot of people who are data labeling and data cleaning. They're working on that, and then there are these organizations who are saying who are depending more and more on data to take decisions. Do you see that in the long run, maybe humans being less relevant and decisions being taken more by AI? Is that something that worries you?
No, see, to me, it doesn't worry. I think if you design everything with humans at the center, and you do as a human-centered design, I don't think there is a problem. And I don't think that today AI is going to replace humans anyway, right? So we're not at that level of maturity anyways. See, today, the way we are looking at AI is AI assistants. So what am I going to use AI services for? I'm going to use AI services to augment and empower the human users and to make them more productive. See, even today, a lot of deterministic decisions that have to be made. The way a lot of the IT systems are built is they are not built to be what I would say is zero latency, right? So a lot of them have been designed to go through a number of approval processes and all that stuff, which are not required. So one I think with AI systems, one of the things that we can do is we can crunch the data, we can analyze, we can make recommendations, but then we would eventually let the humans make those decisions and act on it. Unless you have cases where it is a low value. Right. So what we are finding today is a lot of use cases where if you have a low value transactions or low risk operations or interactions where you have got one an accuracy which is higher than 95% and you believe it is something that can be managed in the operating context in the regulation, from a regulation standpoint as well, then I think those are being done in a straight through manner without human involvement. But otherwise, I see AI to be more of an AI assistant, right? So we recently, for example, looked at Codex, and then we said, okay, GPT-J to say, okay, can this essentially, generate a lot of code that we can use? But what we are still finding is maybe the code that is generated will help only from 30-35% of what I as a developer have to do. So there is still a lot of work that needs to be done, right? So one is AI assistant. Second, what we don't see a lot of times is AI is also creating a lot of jobs. There are a lot of data
Exactly.
foundries that are there, which never existed before, but today they are there. And then when humans will, move away of these routine, rudimentary activities, they will do higher value added services, which is what history has taught us, right? Automation has never replaced jobs. It has created newer jobs in newer industries and so on and so forth.
Right. Sticking onto the subject of disruption, because all of these technologies are growing exponentially, and maybe in the next few years, the chances are that if we do not direct it at the right space, it can go out of mankind's hand. Because that's there'll always be some fringe elements who will kind of like tinker it around in a way. Blockchain, and your expertise lies in also the finance industry. Just Deloitte, I think, last year created a report saying that fiat currency, reserve currency, will make way to cryptocurrency. What are your views on that? What are your views on a traditional banking industry versus blockchain, this crypto, and these NFTs which are spawning, as a new economical layer?
I think it is still a very evolving space. I'm more interested on the underlying building blocks of technology like the distributed ledger technology. I think the potential of that technology to do different things is great. Now, some of these things like NFTs and other things, I think we'll keep seeing more and more of evolution of these, and we'll have to see how much of it is centralized, how much of it is decentralized, how much of it is green. So I think those will evolve, and it's a very evolving space at this point. So we'll have to wait and see. But I think I'm very excited about the potential of that underlying distributed ledger technology, especially as we move towards a distributed and intelligent era, right? So my belief is this decade is also about distributed and intelligent era, where everything will become distributed, and these distributed softwares that are running across the continuum will become a lot more intelligent because AI. The good thing with AI now is we are seeing the emergence of tiny AI, which means I can train models with lesser data set, and then I can also have models which are of lighter size, and that can run on smaller amount of CPU memory, right? And so that will expand, and there I think there are a lot of interesting use cases that will.
Lovely. Rafee, thank you. Super, super appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast and sharing your insights. My last question to you: any advice that you would like to share for enterprise and startups, to innovate and scale in a post-COVID world? And maybe can you share, your maybe vision or some tech trends of what we can expect to see in 2022 and beyond?
Yeah, I think, I would say my only advice is I think technology is evolving fast, so we have to keep we have to spend some time to understand the potential of technology. But end of the day, I think we have to look at what is the benefit of applying this technology to solve the business problems, customer, consumer problems. And a lot of times, we may end up using technology as one hammer to solve every single problem, which is not good, right? So that's one. And if you look at trends, I think the way, if I look at it, we started from pre-cloud to cloud, and then to an apps and platform era. And in my view, this decade is about being distributed and intelligent. And here, a few things. Distributed means what I'm finding is cloud itself is becoming distributed now. Everything was about central cloud. Now we are seeing a lot of edge clouds. You're also seeing a lot of edge compute, and then a lot of devices like fog devices which are out there, right? So the one distribution will start happening more and more, either due to regulatory needs, residency needs, latency needs, or otherwise. And I think this will happen more and more. And as this happens, I think the environment will become more complex because now you have a very fragmented landscape. So security and privacy will become has to be the main focus area, right? Because now the threat surface has increased, the data is distributed, it is no longer within your data centers. So those two things will become absolutely critical. With more maturity in AI and also tiny AI coming into play, which can run on our devices, I think AI should be one big area that we will see a significant amount of usage, as well as a lot of new features coming out in the AI space. And then the distributed ledger technology is one. I think metaverse and Web3, we still have to see how that evolves. It is evolving. I'm very gung-ho about augmented reality actually, because I think that's something that is here and now, and we'll see a lot more of it happen. And so I think those are the big things that I see. And obviously then there are other things, platforms, automation, and other things which will happen more and more.
Lovely. Rafee, thank you. Sincerely appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. And yes, these convergence of technologies, the rapid acceleration of technologies, I think we need to be very careful on creating technologies which you rightfully mentioned, which benefits us and solves a problem, rather than just approaching technology because the metaverse hype, it's in a hype cycle, and let's just go for it. And you mentioned that security and privacy is going to play such a huge role in the world which is getting digitized. I think that's something which we didn't speak about, but maybe next time we can have a conversation about that, because that's something which we really need to pay attention. But really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye bye. Thank you, Rafee. Really appreciate this.
Thank you so much.